Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. You ever hear the old saying, whip your butt with a pen? It refers to how white power, when it finds that it can't beat a black person in sports or in entertainment or in business, they resort to their legislature to write laws meant to target and punish us, or they turn to their white media who denigrates us and claims that our accomplishments are somehow not really valid. They lose on the sports field or at the cash register, but they try to give themselves the victory in their media instead by literally writing that they are the winners regardless. And if you're not careful, or if you're not intelligent, you just might find yourself actually believing it. That's what we're seeing with the aftermath of the box office bomb, The Woman King. The white media gave that movie the green light, but black audiences gave it thumbs down. So we already see the white media trying to put a spin on it. Now, I told you a week ago in my video about this flick that the white media would be making the Woman King movie out to be some sort of big awards contender. They would start heaping praise on us. Oh, the awards are surely going to accrue to this movie. I told you that a week ago. And the thing is, you don't have to be Nostradamus to have predicted it. The white media does this whenever there's some poverty porn movie with black folks in it, or some movie showing Africans at war with each other like The Last King of Scotland or Hotel Rwanda. If a movie shows black people in a subservient position like The Green Mile, or it shows black people acting with savagery and barbarity like the genocide in Rwanda or Idi Amin, which is largely propaganda, by the way, then the white media will say, ooh, we got to heap awards on this because that's their way of validating it and saying that this is true, this is worthy, this is something that deserves people's respect. It's a way to confer instant legitimacy on something when you give it an award, and that's the entire point. This is done by Hollywood to reinforce that if you want an Oscar or an Emmy for a movie with black people in it, well, these are the only representations that they're going to give awards to. And to the bootlicks in Hollywood, they would cut their own mother's throats just to get a meeting with the white studio executive. Sadly, there's no lack of Negroes who will gladly run interference for the white media. Now, before we go any farther, there's something that I've been meaning to say regarding Viola Davis, and I know that this is going to rub some folks the wrong way, but I gotta say this, because Viola Davis, in my estimation, seems to have something of an inferiority complex, and it's actually quite sad. This woman clearly wants validation, and she wants it from white people. Whenever she's in front of them, she goes into this please accept me performance.
How is it possible that The Help is your first leading role? I mean, really, you just got an Oscar nomination for Doubt. You have so many Tonys. How is it possible that that was your first leading role in a movie?
Well, it's just the politics, it's just the politics of it all.
Of Hollywood.
Well, yeah, I mean,
there aren't that many roles for
there just aren't a lot of roles for. I mean, I'm a 46-year-old black woman who really doesn't look like Halle Berry, and Halle Berry's having a hard time.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of leading roles.
Okay, I'm gonna have to just stop you there for a second.
Why, you think I look like Halle Berry?
No, you're hot. That is, you have to stop saying that because you're hot as shit. You look amazing.
Oh, I appreciate that, but I have an absolute understanding and awareness of the image, of course, that I project, and there's just not a lot of lead roles for women who look like me, and so that. In my mind, I see a line, and over that line I see green fields and lovely flowers and beautiful white women with their arms stretched out to me over that line. But I can't seem to get there no how. I can't seem to get over that line. That was Harriet Tubman in the 1800s. And let me tell you something. The only thing that separates women of color from anyone else is opportunity.
Viola Davis is a serious actress. She's an important actress. She is a definite bona fide thespian. Charlize Theron is just some white woman who imported her way into the United States, and somebody thought because she's blonde-haired, blue-eyed, with narrow features that apparently that makes her something. Charlize Theron is not much better and not much different than an extra in a B movie. So for someone like Charlize Theron to basically be bestowing her graces on Viola Davis, oh, here's this blonde-haired, blue-eyed white woman saying how beautiful you are, and then when she wins an Emmy, Viola Davis is talking about white women with their arms outstretched. Those white women that Harriet Tubman was talking about, those white women were the main ones saying that black folks shouldn't be let out of chains in the first place. They were going for self. But I get it. She was basically saying to the white studio executives and the producers and the networks, please make sure to throw me some more work. Please don't have me washed up as soon as my show gets canceled or as soon as I finish with awards season. I get it. But to me, it is ridiculous and insulting that you have the juxtaposition of a serious actress like Viola Davis, and here she is getting a pat on the head from a sadistic, racist, no talent like Charlize Theron, who couldn't act her way out of a paper bag of Lee Strasberg, rose from his grave and gave her acting lessons, and yet here she is, this sadistic racist, who is calling herself bestowing legitimacy on the beauty of Viola Davis and black women who are dark-skinned in general. That's what this is. Oh, you got this blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman saying, oh, I think you people are so pretty. Again, I'm not trashing Viola Davis or trying to dog her out. I don't know Viola Davis well enough to condemn her or to put her on a pedestal, but let's just say she's a Negro in Hollywood, and we ought to know by now that those guys are usually codependents. The late, great Paul Mooney talked about that. He said that the most soulless, empty people that he knew, the ones who were the most eager to deny reality and lick boots, were black people in Hollywood who spent their time clout chasing. And to put it bluntly, I've smelled that on Viola Davis for a while now. She has a dark skin complex, and the way she does things screams, pick me. I'm not hating, just stating. And that, of course, brings us to the next point of how the white media is trying to prop up this movie even in defeat. All this awards talk, it's just more of the white media trying to credentialize their own propaganda. A flick that fell out of the #1 slot after only 1 week, and it fell against weak competition. How the hell do you lose your spot to a romantic comedy with Harry Styles of all people, a movie that's been mired in controversy of its own, by the way? And you also lose to a re-release of a 10-year-old flick, Avatar. The Woman King made only $19 million its opening weekend, and yet you got the white media falling over themselves trying to make it out to be some sort of awesome cinematic achievement. But why? Not because they like black people, and not because they like this movie either. What makes this movie so great that the white media thinks it's so deserving of praise and adulation? Notice how the white media types who are pretending to think so highly of this movie can't tell you anything about it. They don't have a favorite scene that they like. They don't have a favorite sequence from it, a favorite character, or even one line of quotable dialogue. They can't tell you what's so great about it. They can't even remember it. But they do want you to think it's somehow deserving of awards and praise. It's not about what they believe. It's about manipulating what you believe. Because one thing's for sure, this movie definitely ain't setting the box office on fire. The marketing for this movie tried to position it as some sort of half-brained 300 meets Black Panther knockoff, and it didn't work. By the way, the studio's thinking was clearly 300 first. Black folks were an afterthought to them. The visuals for this movie don't have enough computer graphics or flair to be Black Panther or 300, and the protagonists are not anyone that people want to root for. In Black Panther, King T'Challa wasn't enslaving other black folks. But the contradictions are meaningless for the white media. They're going to pretend to love it because this is a movie where they can point to it and say, see, this movie shows Africans were solely responsible for the slave trade. You can't blame the Europeans. Why? It's in a movie, so it must be true. It's comfort food for racists. So as long as it fits their anti-black narrative, they'll pretend to like it because it serves the overarching goal of attacking black people. And the only lie that they've told that's more ridiculous than this awards contender crap is that this movie is going to make money. Again, I think it's time for a quick refresher course on the mathematics of how movies make or lose money.
As somebody who's been intimately involved in movie making for 30 years, what are the macro Hollywood conditions behind that sentiment?
Well, so what happened was the DVD was a huge part of our business, of our revenue stream. And technology has just made that obsolete. And so the movies that we used to make, you could afford to not make all of your money when it played in the theater, because you knew you had the DVD coming behind the release, and 6 months later you'd get a whole nother chunk. It would be like reopening the movie almost. And when that went away, that changed the type of movies that we could make. I did this movie Behind the Candelabra, and I talked to a studio executive who explained it was a $25 million movie. I would have to put that much into print and advertising, right, to market it, what we call P&A. So I'd have to put that in P&A. So now I'm in $50 million. I have to split everything I get with the exhibitor, right, the people who own the movie theaters. So I would have to make $100 million before I got into profit. And the idea of making $100 million on a story about like this love affair between these two people, yeah, I love everyone in the movie, but that's suddenly a massive gamble in a way that it wasn't in the 1990s when they were making all those kind of movies, the kind of movies that I loved and the kind of movies that were my bread and butter.
Now keep in mind, this is Matt Damon saying this. And yeah, the little undercover bigot that he is, but the truth of the matter is, the guy's been in Hollywood making hits since the 1990s, a lot longer than John Boyega or anyone associated with this Woman King movie. At the very least, we should give Matt Damon credit for at least knowing how his movies make money. And no shade to Viola Davis, but her, character in The Woman King ain't exactly Jason Bourne. Now, Matt Damon was talking about his experience with a movie starring white men, a movie that only cost $25 million to make, and he pointed out that they'd have to make over $100 million just to recoup their costs to produce the movie and to market it. $100 million before they're even able to have a profit. The Woman King, on the other hand, cost $50 million to make, twice as much as Damon's proposed movie. Does anyone see it getting anywhere near $100 million by the time it finishes its box office run? Did Harriet make that kind of money? That turkey did only a little more than double its budget by the time it was finally kicked out of theaters. See, winning the opening weekend is only the beginning of the fight to get a movie to profitability. But the white media knows that most people don't know this fact. Most people don't know how movie math actually works, so the white media can claim that a movie has made money. But making money isn't the same as making a profit. And even if this movie was making $1 billion at the box office, does that mean that we should give it a pass for its lies that it's been telling about the history of black people? Even if it was a financial success, hell, even if it was a big financial success, would that make the studio and the filmmakers' racist lies any less odious? Would that make it right? Hollywood makes a lot of films that are based on true events or otherwise rooted in a historical incident, and a lot of the hack filmmakers and outright frauds who make these movies try to cover up their laziness or their deliberate imposition of their bias into the movie by claiming that they're taking creative license. Creative license can be fun, but only if the subject you're taking liberties with isn't too important. And when it comes to the greatest crime in human history, you don't take any license with that. When you choose to make a movie about a group of people who collaborated in the slave trade and all but ignore the part they played in it and then try to sprinkle sugar on crap by having a couple of throwaway scenes where one of them says, maybe we ought to get into a new line of work, that's not creative license. That's just out and out lying. You would never have a movie made about the Nazis showing them as the heroes as they go about devastating Europe and exterminating the Jews. Oh, but they were so valiant, weren't they? But the problem is the Nazis lost their war. Meanwhile, over here in the US, the white supremacists won. So we see what a world under the Nazis would look like. Not much different than the one we're in now. Hollywood knows how to push the buttons of the weak-minded and the willingly gullible. While the white women behind this Woman King movie get to indulge their girl power fantasy, they also get to make black women, particularly dark-skinned black women, out to be angry, brutish, battle-scarred, and most of all, ugly. You have never seen a white woman portrayed like that in some war movie or some movie about white women warriors. It doesn't matter if it's Joan of Arc or the Amazons and Wonder Woman or whomever. When it comes to white women, all those warriors have makeup on. They're not covered in scars. They make them look as soft and feminine as possible, so there's no way to mistake them for anything but women. A movie like this is not meant to show strong, independent black women. It is meant to show that black women are basically nothing but a bunch of men. It's meant to strip black women of their femininity, and in the process strip them of an essential part of their identity. Lies like this are meant to blur the line between reality and white supremacist fantasy. This kind of propaganda creates a lane so that anti-black racists can claim the slave trade was all black people's fault, and the Europeans really had nothing to do with it. Why? Those Africans, they practically forced the Europeans to take slaves. And because you got the same black people who were being paid to be in this movie who are running interference for it, well, it must be true, right? But the black lash is putting all of them on the defensive. They can't have it all their own way, and they're finding out the hard way that no, not all publicity is good publicity. Some publicity hurts you. A lot. By the way, I couldn't help but notice there were a couple of stupid movie blogs talking about, what about a sequel to this movie? A sequel to this bomb? Yeah, I'll be waiting to see The Woman King Part 2. I'm sure it'll come out right after they make that sequel to Harriet, and Precious, and Moonlight, and all the other crap flicks that the white studios put out that they heaped praise and awards on, but failed to make a profit on. You can put lipstick on a pig, but that doesn't make it a supermodel. So once again, no, this movie is not some hit. It hasn't made a profit, and unless Bill Gates decides to buy $70 million worth of movie tickets for this turkey, it's not gonna make a profit either. The white media can give it praise in their headlines, and they can give it meaningless awards, but they can't give it legitimacy or a pass. And they can't give it your money either. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Cynthia Nixon, Sean Gilchrist, Fresner Peralt, Bobby Williams, and Anthony Pollard. Salute to them, and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.